Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest Vouchsafe webinar. So today, this one is called the conversion cliff edge, and I'll just take a second to explain that. So there's nothing worse than being frisked for a passport or a driving license right after you sign up to something or at the wrong time. That part of the journey, that part of onboarding to a service can basically be a massive inconvenience. People might not have it on them. They might not have the right document at all. They might just want to get it done there and then on their phone, but they can't because they don't have it with them. So for fintechs and other regulated startups, it can be quite a dangerous and difficult moment, and that conversion rate can plummet. So you have to find that balance between asking for the right things. If you ask for too much, the drop-off becomes unsustainable, but if you ask for too little, you leave yourself open to fraud. Today, we're going to talk about that conversion cliff edge. So the moment that users are asked for more information, for details, for documents to verify themselves or other ways to verify themselves, and what we can do to make that part of the journey as safe as possible and as secure as possible, but also better for users and therefore better for the companies that are asking for users to verify themselves. So I'm Chloe, I'm CEO and one of the co-founders of Vouchsafe, and I'm joined by two brilliant people today. I'm joined by Sophia and Vlad, and I'm gonna give them a second to introduce themselves. So first of all, I'm gonna hand over to you, Sophia, and then if you'd like to hand over to Vlad. So Sophia, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself and tell us a bit about Mia Wealth.
Thanks so much, Chloe. So the average 10-year-old owns 238 toys and plays with just 12. Collectively, we spend billions of pounds on toys every year for children, but at the same time, we have a generation growing up unable to afford their first home. I'm a toddler twin mum and a former family wealth manager, and I've become obsessed with solving this problem for the 14 million children across the UK that deserve a better financial future. So I co-founded Mia Wealth and I'm CEO of the company, and our app makes it really easy for you to buy investments for children instead of more toys. And we're regulated, we're live in the market and working with Vouchsafe for our KYC.
Thank you, Sophia. Great. Vlad, I cannot get over that number of toys. That has shocked me to my very core. Vlad, let's hear about you and Green Republic.
Yeah, so my name is Vlad, and I started off as a product at a company called Container Exchange, which became basically an eBay for physical containers. So I was building the digital product there because at that time, like, you know, selling and buying real physical containers on a platform was like, wow, incredible. So we've digitized that entire process, right? Then I came back to the UK and I started a company called Green Republic. We started off as a tech agency, but essentially we've turned into a venture studio. So far we have 5 active products and investments. And my focus is obviously, I guess, more still from the product side massively, which means, you know, understanding what are we actually building, where's the product market fit. And I think a very interesting question, and I'm sure we'll discuss this today, it's like, how do you even get people to actually see value in what you're doing, right? Because very often it's not even the case of, oh, I'm solving a problem, but it's actually, how do you get that attention? How do you get them to understand? So I guess that's my focus. And so far we are active in healthcare, in logistics, in art. So we manage a lot of artworks as well. And yeah, day to day building products, AI stuff, just generic, you know, traditional software as well, a lot of ID verification. So still, even though obviously I'm not sort of day-to-day developing, but every single morning you know, there on all of those products and team syncs. So I'm actively involved into product development, and to be very honest, that's what I enjoy the most. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you so much. I think this will be really interesting because we're all coming at it from quite different angles. So I'm really excited to get stuck in. First of all, I'm going to ask you both. I'll go to you, Sophia, first, and then Vlad. What I was wondering is if you could share with us actually a personal example you've had of a bad onboarding experience. So when you've gone to sign up for something or even prove who you are, where you have found that to be frustrating or difficult.
It was actually one of the reasons that I had the idea for Mia Wealth, because of a poor onboarding experience. So when I was a family wealth manager, same thing as a financial advisor, I obviously had to do KYC and AML checks on the clients that I was working with before they could invest. And, for some clients, it was really complex setups that we were creating, trusts and cross-border, jurisdiction investments and things like that. But regardless of the type of client we were working with, because some clients it was as simple as opening a junior investment account for them, we would have to do the same level of KYC and AML screening on everyone. And it was a very clunky process. So it could take weeks to do, because in some cases, depending on the provider, we'd actually have to be in person with that client to check their ID, for example. And if not, it was we had to wait for the client to actually certify or get the ID certified before we could actually onboard them. And so it was just this big barrier to entry, essentially, for people wanting to start either investing for themselves or investing for the children in their life. And I thought, because I specialized in family financial planning and I was known in the industry for setting up junior investment accounts, so junior stocks and shares ISAs and junior pensions, I thought these are fairly simple accounts with, £100 going into them. Why are we doing this weeks of sort of KYC onboarding and AML checks just to set up those accounts? So I thought there must be a better way. There must be an easier way of doing this and a better customer experience. There must be an app that's just doing this really seamlessly without all of that. And there isn't. And that's why I founded and now obviously in building Mia Wealth. But something that was really important to us because of the poor customer experience is making sure that with our target market, which are busy parents, typically have very young children, our goal is to be onboarded, including KYC screening, in less than 5 minutes, all digital end-to-end process.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And when you said certify an ID there, am I right in thinking that that's sort of through a solicitor so an even more steps sort of in the wider world is what people were facing?
Exactly. So it would require our client to go out and find a solicitor or somebody that counts as someone that can certify it and actually do a wet ink signature and then email it on to us.
A high faff activity.
Yeah.
High faff activity. Yes.
It isn't needed in most cases. We're doing it as a proof of ID and proof of address check.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Vlad, how about yourself when you've been signing up for something?
I'll probably use the worst example because I'll go back to this example later, as well. It's not necessarily an example of like, sort of onboarding, but long story short, 2 years ago, I was getting a Spanish business visa because we were planning to open an entity there. And if you've ever used, I'm going to call them out, like VFS Global, it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Like you can't even imagine. So to keep it short, like you've got to upload documents, you've got to upload, I don't even remember what, your tickets, you've got to then upload, all of your travel plans and so on and so on. And I think because of the bot system in place, a lot of people are trying to get sort of these appointments quicker by using these automated bots. So they've sort of tried to put some of these security, a bit of kind of like guardrails on top, right, to prevent people from doing, these automated bookings and filling out information. But the problem is they actually ruin the whole system with their security measures. What that means, if I've literally, for example, like I've attached the wrong file, right? And then I go, oh, I need to delete it and attach a new one. The system suddenly goes, oh, you're blocked because it was a bot trying to upload another file. And it's literally me just, taking the wrong photo. You upload the wrong photo and it says, no, this is wrong. So long story short, I'm not even trying to exaggerate, but it probably took me a month to get an appointment.
Oh, wow.
Because sometimes you get through the whole application and there's no availability. And you go, fine, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. But you come back tomorrow and then it says, well, we're seeing increased activity from your IP. So it means, but because there was no availability yesterday, I like, how else would I check, right? So I go again, I check, and it says, well, you're blocked now. So then I had a week or two where my account was blocked, and I sent an email saying, guys, there's no bot. I'm literally just trying to get through this process. So this is the best comment. Like, if you want to find like an anti-case, you've got to go for them. Like, I can't believe like how bad this is on all of the possible levels. You know, not just, you know, uploading documents and checking, but literally just, you know, scheduling, you know, security system in place, and so on and so on. And then the last bit, what just killed me, is basically, so obviously, you know, as you can see, you know, my name and surname is very Eastern European, right? So I was born in Russia, and in Russia, we have a middle name as well. So my middle name is Alexeyevich. What I didn't know is when you get the police certificate that, you know, no crimes or anything, it has your middle name there. So when I uploaded the certificate and it had, you know, Vladislav Alexeyevich Mukhachev, it went and said, no, that's a bot, it's not you. And I'm like, guys, like, this is me, but it's just the police certificate has a different standard, and like how they put the name, the surname, and the middle name there. So not even joking, took me like a month to get through that process. I've never seen anything worse. It's just insane. But I'll get back to this example because I think it is still interesting to think about this. Yeah.
I felt like I was coming out in hives when you were just describing that process. Like, as someone who used to design government processes digitally, do user research, product design, and that, as you were describing that, it was taking quite a lot of sort of personal strength not to literally rip my hair out. So yeah. I really feel like you communicated that well.
It's that bad.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, but that I'll be chewing that over in my mind, actually. I think that's actually quite a good place, unless Sophia, you wanted to come in and add anything to that.
No, that's
there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah,
I can tell you.
I'm impressed that you carried on though.
But that's the point I want to make. Like, if you have to do something, you got to get through it. This is the biggest point with onboarding.
Yeah, if you absolutely have to do it, yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's when there's choice on the market, it's something that that you don't necessarily have to go with that company that you're trying to onboard with. But when it's the government, I think it's a very different feeling, and also different motivation. Yeah, you're bang on with that, and usually a worse user experience, I find, as well, from what you've just said. So I think that would be quite a good segue into sort of my first question, really, which is, what unites bad onboarding experiences for people, and what themes do we see through that? So again, Sophia, I think I'll come to you first, because you were talking there about your customers are busy parents. So for them, what unites a bad onboarding experience? Because I'm sure it will translate across to the users that Vlad's companies are dealing with as well.
Yeah, well, if we actually drill down into the most common customer that we see, it's a mum of 0 to 4-year-olds, and those women have often gone through a name change because of marriage, and so this is a big frustration for them. And I've gone through it myself. I know we were speaking about this last time, Chloe, which is essentially they're treated as if they're trying to commit fraud by many providers.
What happened there? Oh, I think Sophia may be experiencing the exactly what she was just talking about, which is being the busy mum of a 0 to 4-year-old, or 2 0 to 4-year-olds.
Maybe it's my there's a script.
Oh, okay. Or 0 to 4-year-olds or dogs. Yeah.
So yeah, they're essentially treated as if they're committing fraud because the names change, and often providers will require you to send the original copy of your marriage certificate, and in worst cases you don't actually ever get it back because it's been lost. So that is just a terrible onboarding experience that affects so many women and men as well who change their name, and it's something that I saw a lot when I was a financial advisor as well in the wealth management industry, and what we're trying to solve now for Mia Wealth with our customers.
I can imagine. It's also, I think, the mental load that adds to it, right? As well, I'm trying to open an account for my child. I've changed my surname, and now I have to go and that could have been years ago, it could have been recently, but now I have to dig out a piece of paper that was given to me by someone, like posted to me by a council years ago, and I have to find a way of I have to send that original. Like, there are so many steps in that, so many touch points. You literally have to probably go to the post office, or if you've got a printer, you have to get that to work so that you can get the signed delivery, and there's so many steps in that, isn't there?
Exactly. And like all of us, but especially mums, your to-do list is just never ending. And so on the to-do list could be start investing for my child, and finally you find a spare few moments to get started. And then if you're met with a barrier of, okay, now at some stage of the process, I've got to find a physical document, and worst case, print something out or get something certified and go to a post office, because you don't have to do it. As Vlad mentioned earlier, it's not something that, if you have to do it, you have to go through that process, but this is optional. It's just something that will be a good thing to do. It's probably going to stop you doing it. So it's really important that we reduce those barriers.
I agree. Vlad, what, from your experiences and from the companies you work with, what unites that bad onboarding experience?
I mean, look, if we really keep it simple, I think it's lack of common sense, right? But I think the bigger problem, and what unites them, I think, is most of the products or businesses still operate in a environment where they think that people have so much time and so much attention. Because if you look at, again, 10, 20, I mean, to be honest, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we still didn't have that many apps, that many services online, right? Like, I mean, look at fintech, right? In the UK, it only happened in the last 5 years, you could say. So even with just sort of fintech reinventing itself in the UK, you suddenly need to verify or re-verify yourself again, whether it's your mortgage, where your bank account, insurance, whatever it is, right? The point I'm trying to make is, previously that would be something offline and people didn't have that pressure, right? So now suddenly we just have more and more use cases where we need to do something. And I think a lot of businesses kind of really underestimate how little time people have to do things, and they still think, oh, a person has an hour to do this, so why not? We'll take all of the 60 minutes of their time to make them go through their onboarding. I think it's that, because that taps into obviously product design, experience, user journey, and so on and so on. Otherwise I don't have an explanation why they're doing it.
I think that's something, and I wanted to just, on what you were saying about it taking an hour, and also about attention, I think something that enrages me in a lot of design is an unnecessary timeout. And I imagine that this, can impact business owners who are going through verification, or busy mums, or busy parents. But the thing that I think for me is, as soon as I see a countdown timer, I panic, and I can't. Where is the thing that I need to provide? I don't know. So when we were building Vouchsafe, we deliberately built it in a way that means that you can close it and you can come back to it. And I think that works for parents who have got a toddler running around, and it also works for business owners who are distracted by an urgent email or something going on, or often in this case, often me spilling a can of Diet Coke. You can come back to it at the point that you need to.
Yeah, and that's actually
go ahead.
It was a feature that we were specifically looking for when looking at which KYC provider to work with, because we knew that our target market are going to be distracted easily. You find a few minutes to actually open an investment account for your child, and then before you know it, your toddler's pulling on you, or your baby's been sick on you, or something's happened, and you have to come back to it. And a customer actually experienced this last week as a really positive feature in our onboarding experience, because obviously, you know, we're working with Vouchsafe, and she exactly that. She started and one of her kids distracted her, so she had to come back to it later when they'd gone down for their nap. And she said, oh, she was sort of dreading it because she thought, I'm going to have to put in all my details again and start again. But she just picked up where she left off, and she said that was just so lovely and unexpected, and just meant that from the get-go she's already got a really positive experience with Mia Wealth.
I think one of the other things that I kind of like keep noticing is one of the, I guess, root, you know, of the problem is that a lot of businesses still operate sort of thinking that no, they've built their systems when they were kind of allowed to get more data than they could. So, you know, like previously 10, you know, again, 20 years ago, businesses, the whole logic behind onboarding or getting client was like, fine, let's get them to upload everything they have, like literally all of the docs, let them upload it, right? So this is why, again, from a UX perspective, a lot of businesses are still doing it. But as governments get more and more kind of like stricter in terms of, you know, how much data can you collect? Are you storing that data? Do you have to delete it? I think only that kind of like only sort of now forces businesses to actually rethink their onboarding, so that instead of, again, you filling out 20 fields, because why not? Let's just get everything we can. Now businesses are like, actually, let's get it down to, you know, only 3 fields, because that's all we need. So I think it's that as well, because businesses would just keep everything they have on you.
Yeah, I think designing for sort of almost like privacy and asking for the minimum of what you need when you need it, I think is
Exactly.
a really good way. I mean, we've strayed into what my second question was going to be, which was what unites good onboarding experiences and how do we create them? And we've touched on a few things here. So being able to come back to what you're doing and not being timed out of it. We've spoken about asking for the sort of minimum viable amount of information that's needed in order to be secure. Is there anything else that sort of comes to you? I know, Vlad, actually in our pre-call you spoke about breaking down onboarding and what that looks like and how that's been helpful.
I think honestly, that going back to my awful example, right, the one with the Spanish application, I think that's an example of like them forcing me to do it no matter what, right? Like even if they said, Vlad, you've got to travel to, I don't know, Manchester to do it from this laptop, that's the only way to get an appointment, I'll genuinely go because I'm actually forced. But now most of the services, 99% of the products out there, right, they're not forcing you. Like they've got to prove that, you know, they deserve your they deserve you as a user. And what I find very, very interesting is, so for example, we run a healthcare marketplace, and every day we find more and more carers that we onboard, right? And if you were to collect, let's just say there's 20 fields, right? But there's actually less. But even if it's 10, right? If we do it all in one go, after running an ad and then saying, hey, you interested, fill this out, you know, get, you know, self sort of service onboarding, they would never do it because you haven't proven enough. You haven't shown that value for them to get, you know, excited and actually onboard themselves, because again, everybody's busy. To the point, I think what is interesting, many products or services are actually great. You know, there's a product market fit, there's demand, but it's basically delivering and showing and proving that value in chunks and sort of pieces. And that's what I find interesting, how your conversion could actually go from, you know, X to 2X just because you split up the onboarding into 2 bits. And that's what we've done, for example, in this healthcare marketplace, is we only get the very, very necessary information, you know, as a first step, sort of first onboarding. And once you've logged in, there's still onboarding there, but it's kind of like, yeah, you can do that later on whenever you have time. So I think doing that already helps you as a business, you know, convert clients or, you know, users quicker, get them onboarded. Because I reckon it's interesting. I think with onboarding, very often it kind of like splits between product teams and marketing teams. And very often there wouldn't be super clear ownership. So very often people just don't really think about it. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, people can sign up, do stuff. But it's the small things like this could actually make a, you know, massive change, again, in terms of conversion. Because people, to the point, and my worst example, people don't really need you. And we've got to factor that in when marketing our products or services.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Vlad, because, you know, particularly in our space, which is regulated, instead of actually product and marketing owning that onboarding channel, sometimes it can be compliance, which is needed, but it does not create the best customer experience. And you often will see high drop-offs because compliance are requesting everything up front. But actually, I completely agree with what you said. It's actually, can we break it down? What's necessary to get to the next step and show that value add before we hit them with a full, you know, KYC and AML questionnaire? And as part of that, because, you know, many of our customers, they're first time investors, so they might not know that actually they need to go through KYC in order to open a junior investment account for their child. So we actually make it really clear, and we have an eye at the top of the screen which says, why do we need to know this? And we actually explain why it is part of UK regulation that we need to know, you know, where the money's coming from. Is it savings or salary, or even how much you're earning? Like, we do have to ask that because it helps us in the background with our AML screening. But this is a new provider, so you've got to have that buy-in and that value add before you start asking questions, which we need to do from a regulatory perspective, but also we're transparent with them as to why we need to ask that too.
I think there's something in there as well around the incentive to do it. When you're coming at it from a compliance angle, the incentive to ask for those materials and the incentive for those materials to be provided to you is a regulatory perspective, right? It's the motivation is that this business remains compliant and that you protect yourself against fraud. But actually, if you're asking, as you were saying there about carers as well, Vlad, if you're asking for everything up front on the first page or on the second page, or, you know, directly after an ad, you're asking people to provide you with not just a lot of stuff, but, you know, their most personal identifiable information when they haven't really got a relationship with what you do or what will happen or why. They don't have that established motivation yet. Do either of you have anything on how you build that motivation to sort of stop that drop off as soon as someone's presented with what they need to provide?
Look, my answer would be based on experience, you know, in very, very different industries. Like, there's no single sort of recipe, I guess, you know, how the onboarding should look. It's like the devil is in the detail, right? It's always very, very nuanced. But I reckon from an overall business sort of, I guess, perspective, I think it just needs to be more marketing. I mean, healthy marketing, you know, building a relationship with a customer, getting them to understand what you're doing, what is the value, you know, showing that value through, you know, product demos or whatever that is, right? In your case specifically, and only then beginning the onboarding. Because what I see very, very often in businesses, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's just everybody's trying to put onboarding so early. And I get it, like, you know, from like, yeah, you want people onboarded quicker, you want customers quicker. I totally agree and understand. But if we're just, you know, adding that onboarding link on the first ad they see, what's the point of it? If they're not going to convert fully, they're not going to onboard, you know, they're going to drop at some point. I see no point. And I think this is happening again very often because there's misalignment in KPIs. Again, I'm going to simplify it, but let's say, you know, ops director going to a marketing person and agency and going, look, we need 30 conversions, which is an onboarding through coming from this ad. And then the marketing person says, yep, no problem. I'll get you 30 people, you know, who will begin this onboarding process. And that was the KPI. Whether they convert or no, the marketing person doesn't care. But obviously that becomes an ops problem. What do we do with this? Because marketing has done their job. So to the point, I think this is where you've got to really understand your funnel, first of all, as obvious as it sounds, but also understand what role plays onboarding specifically in your business and in your product, and how do you make it as simple as possible? Because like I said, if your onboarding is heavy, you probably need to double your marketing sort of, you know, top of the funnel or medium funnel, just to get people to a point where they're actually ready to onboard themselves. Again, from my experience, I think this would solve so many problems and just help onboard people quicker.
Yeah, and it's a mistake that we made. So when we launched our MVP, we very much did it with fully the compliance hat on. So we asked all the necessary questions that we need as a regulated company to do the KYC and AML screening upfront without showing the value add. And as you can imagine, our conversion wasn't very high. And so we really did a deep dive into changing that and working with our existing beta customers and finding, what point in that journey were they dropping off and why, and what was off-putting to them. And so now version 2 that we've got, in fact, it's not version 2, it's a version 158, because that's how many app releases we've had over the past few weeks, which is crazy. But we're now seeing a much higher conversion, which is what we would expect now. We're showing the value add up front. But even simple things like, because our goal and our KPI is to onboard the majority, 80% of our customers in less than 5 minutes. So they can download the app, put in their details, open a junior investment account and fund it. So everything is digital. We use open banking, integrating Google and Apple Pay at the moment in less than 5 minutes. That's now where we need to look at the onboarding experience as to how do we actually achieve that goal. And also something that we came out of just our research was, we spoke about the timeout, but which is an annoying bad experience, but a good experience is being really clear with how long it's going to take. So initially we had the onboarding questions over a number of screens. And so it's like when someone asks you to do a survey and you're thinking halfway down the survey, like, how many more questions have I got left? Because I can't be bothered. And a lot of us will just exit. We actually then it made it a lot more, we made it much more concise. We actually added all of them onto one screen. So that parent can visually see, okay, there's 10 questions here and I'll go through it. So they know how long it's going to take.
I think that's, being able to see everything you need to do at that point in one place. I've done many a survey, and that is that feeling when you're like, I don't even know how many pages are left. For me, I just want to leave it. I think as well, when you're talking about KPIs there, Vlad, I find it quite interesting how so many vendors in verification and in sort of our world promise a 99% success rate, but what they don't count is how many people drop off. And that the way that we've built Vouchsafe means that you can ask for different things at different times. It's a process, and there is often a very long process that people will eventually need to go through for those higher risk financial services. But it's, for us, the success rate isn't just how many people provide evidence and then are successful. It's how many people start onboarding and finish onboarding, and that's a very different metric, I think.
That's why it's really tough, because the bigger question is basically, how do you create intent in a digital world where there's so many of apps, services, digital products that are out there already. And this is really, really tough, because this taps into, again, marketing, product, business, your pricing, and so on and so on. That's why it's so hard, because again, I feel like too many people are just kind of like optimizing those small things. Let's make the button green and not blue, and surely you'll get something done. But again, back to the worst example, even if there was no button, I would have to find a way to get through that, through that process. So again, I think it just comes down to the intent that you create as a business for your users to onboard themselves.
Of course. Yeah. It's a joined up approach, isn't it, across the whole business, and also any external vendors that you're using.
Yeah.
I don't normally ask this question in webinars, but I've got both of you here, and you both use Vouchsafe in your products. And I was wondering if you could think back and tell me how, because verification, those anti-fraud checks are such an important part of onboarding in the services you've built. How did you go about picking a vendor? What were you looking for, and what did you feel would who would go about this well? Like, what were you looking for when you were initially finding someone?
Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, Sophia, you'd like to go first.
So we were looking for a vendor that obviously would be compliant for our customers and our regulatory requirements in the fastest way, but also in the best way for our customer experience, because that's our USP. So that was really important for us. And therefore, because our goal is to have 80% of our customers pass within 30 seconds, so obviously they pass the automatic background checks that are happening, we need to make sure that our vendor had access to data sources that meant that we could do those checks where we see 80% going through, to be onboarded in less than 5 minutes. And then also, when we have to think about the 20% of users that do require additional checks because something has flagged in the system, whether it's proof of ID or proof of address, even down to a small thing, which isn't small, because so Vouchsafe allow you to, instead of having to actually upload a PDF of your bank statement, you can take a screenshot of your bank account, essentially, or bank statement through your app, and then through your banking app, and then upload it. So even just that short win in terms of time, we've spoken to our customers that have gone down that path where they've had to do that, and they said that was so easy to do. So, and it goes without saying, but obviously also just 100% digital. So not a provider that does request a wet ink paper form to be posted off somewhere, which many still do.
Surprising number. Vlad, how about yourself?
I think my answer would be shorter because I don't want to take the credit for that. So basically, it's actually this healthcare product, and it's an amazing a woman who manages it, Nadia. I love her. And that's her decision. If I'm honest, I literally had no clue you existed, guys. And when I spoke to her, I was like, well, you get to choose it. It's your call. And she said, well, I found these guys. They're good. You know, I like them. And I'm like, yeah, you know, go ahead. If you like them, let's do it. See, then, you know, we went to one of your events, and, you know, and then I kind of like saw the whole app on our production environment, and smooth, you know, I'm doing a bit of ads for you here. But jokes aside, no, I mean, it's my product owner, because she was looking at multiple solutions, and her managing the product day to day from a tech and product sort of angle. She understands the very specific tech things that need to go into the solution before we can integrate anything, because again, there's so many of providers out there. So, but I'm again not taking the credit for this. It's not my decision.
Yeah, I think that was a lovely summary, actually. If Nadia liked you is enough of a
Oh yeah,
enough
well, very quick one. How Nadia started working Green Republic. So we have another woman. She's amazing. She's based in Mauritius, and she called me one day. She's like, Vlad, do you think we need another product owner? And I'm like, yeah, we need one. And she says, well, I know Nadia. She lives in North London as well. And I go, do you vouch for her? I'm like, and she's like, yeah. So I call her. I say, do you want a job? And I said, I don't need your CV. Don't need anything. The fact that she already vouched for you is enough. So that's how Nadia joined us. That's it. That's how we make decisions. Yeah. So.
Perfect. Thank you both. I'm actually going to open the floor to questions. Jay popped a message in the chat, but I'm not sure. Oh, nobody's typed one in. But does anybody in the audience does anybody on the call have any questions?
Yeah, any questions? I think, you know, even if it's something very, very specific, you know, any industry, happy to answer those as well.
I've got a simple one to get us started.
Yes. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear, Jay. I don't know if it's done the merged audio, but you said you've got a simple one to get started, right?
What's changed? Why now? What makes this different? What's so special about this time that means that we can start re-looking at these old assumptions? Sure, a lot more services have gone digital, but what's happening beyond that?
Did everyone get that? Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Would either of you like to take that first? If not, I'm happy to.
Yeah, Chloe, do you start and then I'll jump on.
Yeah, I think why now is such a big question, but I think for me, what I'm seeing with the people that we're talking to, customers that we're talking to, is that the way that we verify people is changing, because what people have is changing. So, for example, in the EU, by the end of the year, all member states have to provide a digital identity in a wallet to their citizens. We had a real inflection point when the biometric residence permit was discontinued in the UK, and e-visas became the replacement for that. And there was at that time no way to automate the checking of them. It was literally people had to physically type in a share code in order to check an e-visa. So we, now have an API that allows people, we've automated that process. I think all of this has come as well off the back of, and I hate to keep talking about the pandemic because it was so long ago, but essentially a vast digitalization of services partnered with the fact that so many financial services now don't have, they have basically no high street. They have no presence on the high street. There's nowhere where you can physically go, even though there are people that would find that more help. There will always be people that would find it more helpful to talk to a human being. So I think why now for us is because the policy and what people have is changing, and also because somebody needed to provide something that was flexible, because humans have different lives to each other, and that means they have different evidences, and some have changed their name and some haven't, and something was needed to reflect that. So for us, when we're talking to customers or any calls that we're in, it's the way the world has changed. That was quite vague. Sophia.
Yeah, and I was gonna say about COVID, because COVID just completely changed everything. It changed the way we work, but particularly if we think about the digital revolution. And that's something that something that's happened in the industry that frustrates me a little bit, because I was a financial advisor during COVID, and a big part of my job was pension transfers. So I would be calling up all the pension companies and actually requesting information that I could analyze whether it was in the client's best interest to transfer from their current pension provider into a new one. And when COVID happened, many of those pension companies suddenly accepted digital signatures, so DocuSign. So we just had this whole wave of companies having to speed up their digitalization process. What happened after COVID was that many of those companies actually went back to now requiring wet ink signatures that are posted, and they would only then send information, which is even more crazy. They would send a client's information in the post, so their pension information, and that would take weeks, and often it would get lost. So that's really frustrating, because I'm like, you were accepting digital requests, and now we've gone back to manual. But from a customer experience perspective, which is everything at Mia, that's what we focus on, customers got used to companies operating in a digital way during COVID. And so the companies that have suddenly then gone back or didn't adopt that, I just think we're at a stage now where we expect better, we deserve better. And therefore the companies that are going to win in this new era are the ones that are providing that seamless digital experience. It should be a no-brainer, but unfortunately it's not.
That, I can't believe people went back. That's shocked me to my core. I think that's actually, we're basically out of time now, but I think that's a really good point to end on as well. So I just wanted to say thank you both for joining, and it's been great to talk to you both in the pre-call and now. It's been really great, and I wanted to thank everybody on the call for coming, and I hope you all get a chance to enjoy the sunshine today. Before I log off though, I just wanted to invite everybody. Vouchsafe are having our summer social on the 24th of June. So if you are anywhere near London, please come along and get some food and a drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. And yeah, we will be sort of celebrating the summer and celebrating all of the things that are currently happening. So yeah, a feel-good moment, hopefully created by Vouchsafe and support of everyone who attends.
Sign up already.
Thank you, Vlad. Come along, everybody. You'll get to meet Vlad. It'd be great. So, yes, thank you, everybody,
Hopefully
for coming.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And yeah, we will see you soon. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank
Thanks a lot,
you.
everyone.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.